We're so glad that we're here together this morning and grateful that we can celebrate the awesome things that God is doing. If I've never met you before, my name is Chris Massey. I'm one of the pastors here on staff at Family Life Church. And we're glad that you came out on a wet, rainy day to come spend some time with us. I tell you, it was really refreshing to my heart to see so many people running into the church this morning. As a pastor, that just warms your heart. Like nobody was walking slowly, like there was quick pace. I could see how excited you guys were to get in. So grateful that we have this time together. A couple things that make you aware before I get into my message this morning. One of the things that, and I know we talked about this several weeks ago, but just wanted to keep it on our radar and give you a little bit of an update, is we talked about 3-4 weeks ago about the church of the future and how, God is calling us to a place of stepping into that new direction for the next generation of ministry here at Family Life Church, to say we want to reach that next generation that needs to know Jesus. And so I've had a number of you ask me about that and what that's going to look like. I will let you know we are going to be kicking off a giving campaign that's going to come on Giving Tuesday, which is right after Thanksgiving. And I was kind of reflecting on that this week, just thinking about, 2 years ago we started a campaign for our 100 for 60. And I want to update you, in the last several weeks, we've actually fully added a third van. We are bringing dozens of students to come to this place on Wednesday night to have the opportunity to know Jesus. And I wish that you could get this as an opportunity, and actually you can, you just have to volunteer. But I was asked to drive one of the vans this Wednesday, and the kids don't really know me. I mean, I've been back there a few times. I say hi to them, I'll greet them at the door. But I'll tell you, when I got out of the van, to be swarmed by a bunch of kids just hugging me and so excited, because the guy getting out of the van represents somebody who loves them with the love of Jesus. And man, what an awesome experience. And so we had thought when we started that we would be doing Sunday mornings and bringing people in on Sunday mornings, but we found that really where we had the greatest effectiveness was on Wednesdays. But now, because those vans are full every week, we are starting to pray about, hey, maybe we can start to bring these kids on Sunday mornings as well, their families, and just see how the Lord can use that moving forward. So really excited that as you've been faithful to the vision, God has really brought everyone that we need into this place together where we can spend time together. But I'll be giving you more information over the next few weeks about the Church of the Future and what that looks like, our giving campaign towards that. I ask you because I also get the questions from some of you who have concerns. You're like, well, wait a minute, what about this and what about that, and will it look like this? Please hear me. I'm with you, and I ask you this. Please pray that the Lord would direct us. We are going to make sure of one thing for sure. We will never compromise the gospel of Jesus Christ. We will never do that. For as long as I'm here, we will never do that. We will always preach the Word of God. We will always preach the Bible. That is not changing, but we are going to really work on, God, what do we need to do to reach the next generation, and how can we do that? The other thing to let you know about is this Wednesday, we actually have one of our missionaries, his name is Matt McCumber, is a missionary to Israel, is going to be here in our Wednesday night service. And he's actually was staying at my house for a couple days, and he will be again this week. But really just hearing some of the things that he's sharing about living in the nation of Israel right now. He has 4 daughters, and just the things that he's experienced in living in kind of a war-torn country and experiencing all of that. So really encourage you that you could have a great opportunity to connect with him, hear a little bit about what God is doing in Israel, and also a project that he is a part of working on as well that he'd like to share. So that's Wednesday at 7. I would love to have you out for that. Well, I'm going to get into my message this morning. We started off a series last week called Defeating Discouragement Biblically. We talked about David and just really this idea of how he really, for most of his life, I mean, obviously we know he had some sin in his life. Nobody's perfect. But for the most of his life, he was trying to do the things that God wanted him to do. And even in the midst of doing that, there were still times that he experienced difficulty, discouragement. He's not alone in that. And we're going to look at that again today in this idea. But I want to introduce you to somebody that you may have heard of before, or you might have gotten confused with someone else. But his name is Elijah of TISHBE, okay? Now, how many of you have heard of Elijah and Elisha? You ever read that and you're like, couldn't they have given them something like a little more different, just so that I don't have to get them confused, all right? Here's how I taught myself to learn it, okay? It's really simple. In the alphabet, J comes before S, so Elijah came before Elisha, all right? So that's how I taught myself to remember the difference between the two. That's a little extra for your benefit there. But here's what I want to let you know about Elijah, just a little bit of information about him. We don't know a lot about him. He ministered from the years about 870 to 850 BC, and he was there in a time when Israel was experiencing a lot of idolatry. When you read in 1 Kings 16 at the end of it, we learn that there's a new king who comes to power. His name is Ahab, and all the Bible really tells us is that Ahab did what was wicked in the eyes of the Lord. And then Ahab married a foreign wife from who was a Sidonian, and she brought in worship of Baal, and they began to make this a national religion within Israel, that they worshiped Baal all over Israel. And so God gives Elijah this message that there's going to be punishment against Israel for worshiping these idols. Throughout his lifetime, he did some major miracles. God used him in some really powerful ways. We'll talk about a few of those today, especially one that is kind of a showdown between him and the prophets of Baal. And then, like we said before, after him came his successor, Elisha. And then the really cool thing about Elijah, one of two people in all of Scripture who did not die a physical death. The Bible tells us that he was carried off in a whirlwind, which I think might be a Bible for tornado. That's kind of scary to me because I don't know about you, tornadoes freak me out. But this is the image of what they shared. I know if you're reading through it quickly, it might look like he was carried off by a chariot of fire. But what it says is that a chariot of fire and horses came and separated Elijah and Elisha. And then after that, Elijah himself was carried up in a whirlwind. So he got the really cool experience of riding a tornado to heaven. I mean, that's pretty awesome, I think. So I want to share a little bit with you, though. So again, I said we don't know a lot about Elijah. He just kind of steps onto the scene, and we're going to read it here in 1 Kings 17. It's the first mention of Elijah in all of Scripture. Comes in 1 Kings 17, verse 1, and here's what it says. Elijah, who was from TISHBE in Gilead, told King Ahab, "As surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, the God I serve, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years until I give the word." Then the Lord said to Elijah, "Go to the east and hide by the Kerith brook, near where it enters the Jordan River. Drink from the brook and eat what the ravens bring you." That's not the Baltimore Ravens, it's like actual ravens, all right? "For I have commanded them to bring you food." So Elijah did as the Lord told him and camped beside Kerith brook, east of the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat each morning and evening, and he drank from the brook. But after a while, the brook dried up, for there was no rainfall in the land. Now, I want to look a little bit here again, like I said, about Elijah. And I think he, in a lot of situations like David, represents for us this idea that you can be doing the right things and still experience discouragement. You can be honoring God with your life and still experience discouragement. We like to really try to oversimplify this and to think that, well, if I'm being discouraged or if I'm going through a discouraging season, then I must have done something wrong, or I'm in disobedience to God, or God's mad at me, God's punishing me. But we do see as a theme through a lot of these that we're looking at that it wasn't just because of punishment, but that there was a reality of things that were bigger than them going on. And so observation number one is simply this: not every discouraging situation is personal. You know, we tend to take things very personally, right? And why? Because it happens to you personally, so you take it personal. But how many of you know there are things that happen that are not necessarily personal, but just part of the world that we live in? You know, maybe if the stock market crashes and you open up your 401k and you lost a ton of money, you're going to be like, "Oh, why is this happening to me?" Well, it's not just happening to you, it's happening to everybody. It's not personal against you. And that's just one example of that, but this is what Elijah experienced, and it's something that Jesus mentioned as well in Matthew 5:45. He says, "The rain falls on the just and the unjust alike." That there is a time and a place where good things are happening to good people, and bad things are happening to bad people and good people. Because, and we've been talking about this a lot over the last 6-8 months, the Bible understood this concept that is very foreign to us in Western ideology, is that it was a community and not just about individuals. You know, to biblical audiences and even biblical authors, for someone to ask, why is this happening to me, would be preposterous. They're like, well, what do you mean, why is it happening to you? It's happening to us. We are all experiencing difficulty. We're all experiencing pain. And Elijah was in this as well, that even though God shielded him from for a season from the time and the pain of this drought, there even for him came a time where his supply dried up. He doesn't complain against God. He doesn't get angry. He literally just moves on, moves north by the Mediterranean Sea, and he just carries on his life there. But there's this reality that we really need to understand. I want you to hear me in this today. Not every discouraging situation is personal. And when we take it personally, when we act like it's just us, and I don't know, maybe we need to hear it in these terms, it's not always about you, right? Maybe we need to just hear that sometimes, okay? I'll say that to you in love. It's not always about you, all right? You want to say it back to me? Will that make you feel better? All right? Thank you. I appreciate that. Some of you took me up on that. I appreciate that. It is always about me, but that's fine. No, it's not always personal. And even when it feels personal, we need to understand the difference, and that God is still working in our lives even when we see bad things happening to good people or good things happening to bad people. This is not God just dealing with every single person in the world individualistically. We are all living in the same fallen world. We're all still living in the same sinful world. In fact, Jesus told his followers, you're going to have trouble in this world. It's going to happen. I've overcome it, but you're still going to have trouble. And at the end of all things, it's not this world that God is saving. It's the people in this world that God is saving. He says, I'm going to have to destroy this whole world and build a new one because this one is not going to be redeemed. I'm going to have to recreate it. And so we need to understand that fallen nature. Well, so here's what happens, right? Elijah, after a while, he sees things getting worse and worse and worse until finally there reaches a point, you can read about this in 1 Kings chapter 18 and 19, where there comes this showdown between Elijah and the prophets of Baal and also the prophets of Asherah. So here's what Elijah comes up with, a great idea, right? I'm the one prophet of the king of Israel, of the God of Israel, and I'm going to call for a showdown between me and all the other prophets of the idols. He says, I want all of you to come to a valley, and we're going to decide whose God is God. He says, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to get 2 bulls, and I'll let you pick whichever one you want. We're going to build 2 altars, and whoever's God can call down fire from heaven is the real, true God. Now, I think it's important to see in this, and if you go back and read it, you'll see that not only is Elijah a prophet, he might be the patron saint of sarcasm. It's really awesome what happens when this all starts to go down. So he allows them to go first, and it says that they dance around, and they chant, and they even start to cut themselves, and Elijah just starts to speak up, and he goes, guys, is your God busy? Is he going potty? It literally says that in the Bible. He asks them if their God is using the bathroom. Like it's so sarcastic. Like, is your God going potty right now? Is that why he can't hear you? And so he's like, there's all these prophets here, and you're all screaming and chanting and doing all these things to try to get the attention of your gods, but nothing seems to be happening. Then here's what Elijah does. He says, I want you to dig a trench around the other altar. And I want you to get a lot of water, and I want you to dump it on the bull. I want you to do it again. You know what? Just for good measure, let's do it one more time. And it says they dumped so much water on this bowl that the water ran over the altar and filled the trench around the altar. And then Elijah stands up and prays this incredibly bold prayer and says, God, let it be known today that in Israel there is only one true God. And it calls down fire and it consumes this entire thing, burning up not only the bowl, but the altar and the water as well. So God moves powerfully, right? Awesome. Elijah gets to see it. Then Elijah, once it happens, all of Israel goes, wait, these guys must be fakes. And Elijah says, they are. Let's kill them. Okay, I'm sorry, that's gruesome. But they do. And then after that, Elijah goes up to a mountain and he goes, all right, it's time for the drought to be over. And he prays for the drought to be over, not one time, but 7 times. Then he goes and tells Ahab, you better get in your chariot and get back to your city because it's about to be raining so hard, you're going to be stuck in case if you don't get there. Then something weird happens, okay? You got to get some mental pictures in your mind when you're reading the Bible. Here's what it literally says. Elijah hikes up his skirt, tucks it in his belt, and runs 25 miles ahead of Ahab and ahead of his horses. Now, I don't know about you, that cracks me up when I think about that. Like, can somebody put the picture of Elijah back up again? I don't know where that was at. The old man with the turban and the staff. Like, he's out there and he tells Ahab, and then all of a sudden he goes, that's okay. I know I don't get a horse today, but we're still going to do this. And he hikes up his tunic, tucks it into his belt, holds onto his stick, and takes off running a marathon ahead of the king to get to the city. So I don't know. This kind of stuff cracks me up. Maybe I'm alone and I'm just crazy. But here's what happens when he gets back to the city. All right, we read this in 1 Kings 19, verses 1 to 8. When Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you killed them. Elijah was afraid and he fled for his life. Now, I don't know about you, but I read that, I'm like, wait a minute. What? This guy just was a part of all these miracles. Like, he defeated first of all, God shows up in power. He defeats all of these prophets. Then he does the weird running thing for 25 miles, ends a drought. But this lady says, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, oh no, and runs. I'm like, who is this lady? That's what he does, okay? I've met some ladies like that. Maybe her name, no, I'm not going to go there. You know what? That's okay. I won't mention any names. Some people know. It says he went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. He had an attendant, left him there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day, and he sat down under a solitary broom tree, and he prayed that he might die. Listen to what he says. I've had enough, Lord. I've had enough. I'm done. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he lay down and slept under a broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, get up and eat. And he looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. And then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him and said, get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you. So he got up and he ate and drank. And the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. You know, as I was preparing this week and I was reading Elijah's words, and something just really struck me. I was in my office on Tuesday praying for this, and I don't want to miss this moment because I feel like the Lord spoke it to me so clearly. I don't know which service, but God told me that somebody would be here today who's feeling like Elijah, who is feeling like, God, I've had enough. I'm ready for death. I'm ready to die. I just can't take it anymore. Can you please hear me? The Lord will meet you at the end of your rope. When you feel like you've got nothing left, when you feel like life no longer has meaning or value, when you feel like you have no choices, please hear me. God will meet you at the end of your rope if you give him the opportunity. Again, I don't know who needs to hear that, but I didn't want to miss it in this message. And I hope if you needed to hear that, please come and talk to me after the service. I'd love to pray with you. You don't have to, but I would certainly be willing to do that. But I just really felt in my spirit that somebody was going to be here today who really has that feeling in them right now, that I'm over it. I'm done. Please know the Lord will meet you at the end of your rope. You know, Elijah experienced these amazing moments where he's living in obedience. He's doing everything God tells him to do. But it doesn't insulate him from the pain of what's happening to the world around him. He's going through all of it. He himself, he's the last of the prophets. And now this woman Jezebel wants to kill him too. And he's reached the end, and he doesn't know where else to turn but to God. But he's just honest with God, and he's like, God, I'm done. I've had enough. I can't take anymore. I know I've been obedient to you, and this whole journey has been amazing, and I wish I could keep going, but I'm out. I'm over. I'm done. I can't handle it anymore. It would be better to die at this point than to keep going the way things have been. Come on, can't you hear this kind of discouragement in his voice and in his words? But then we see something powerful here that happens. Now, when you read in the Old Testament and you hear a reference to the angel of the Lord, there are a lot of theologians who agree that that is a pre-incarnate visitation of Jesus. And the angel of the Lord appears to him and says, let me nourish you, because the journey that's ahead of you is still long. And if you don't let me nourish you, you won't have the strength to get where you're going. Now, here's the other observation we see in this. Sometimes difficult journeys require spiritual nourishment. You know, in the physical, we know this like up and down, right? You don't eat, you won't have strength, you can't do what you need to do, right? You can't starve yourself and expect to be strong. You can't, this is simple science to us. We're like, of course you have to eat. You can't starve yourself or you'll lose all your strength. You won't be able to do what you're supposed to do. Eventually, if you keep that up, you will die. Okay? Now, I know you look at me and you're like, that guy's never missed a meal. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. I've fasted once, okay? But there's a truth about this in the spirit that applies. If you don't nourish yourself spiritually, you won't have the strength that you need, and you won't be able to do what you need to do. And so nourishing ourselves spiritually becomes an incredibly important facet of how we walk with God in every day of our lives. And can I tell you, sometimes, maybe more often than not, when we find ourselves in the place of discouragement, even unto the point of death and being sick of life and over all of it, it may come back to this simple idea. Have we been nourishing ourselves in the Lord? How? Are you spending time in prayer? Are you spending time in the Bible? Are you spending time in the presence of God? Are you spending time learning how to worship outside of when the worship team, which was supposed to be up here 5 minutes ago and isn't, is... He's on a roll, yeah. Remember, the word was Mount Sinai. No, it was Mount Sinai. We talked about this. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Hey, I got to tell you guys, I love our worship team. They do such a great work for us. But you know, worship is more than just what they do. It's not lyrics on a screen. It's learning to connect to the heart of God. And so Elijah experiences this. So he leaves and he goes to Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai. You've probably heard of Mount Sinai before. It's where Moses meets with God after they leave Egypt. And it says that Moses goes up on top of the mountain and he encounters God, and God gives him the 10 Commandments. And to the Israelites, this mountain has extreme significance. Like this is where God is. And so Elijah has to travel 40 days and 40 nights. This is a long distance journey to get back to this mountain so that he can meet with God. But when he gets there, we see this interaction between him and God. And God speaks to him, and we see it in 1 Kings 19:9. He says, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah replied, "I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty, but the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars and killed every one of your prophets, and I'm the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too. Go out and stand before me on the mountain," the Lord told him. As Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Elijah was not a stranger to discouragement. We read his own words. I mean, it's a quote. "I'm so discouraged that I would rather die than keep going right now. I'm over it. I'm done." God says, "Come to the mountain and I'll meet you." And he goes, And Elijah learns something really important in this moment. Because the wind starts to shake everything and rocks are blowing apart. Like for us, it'd be like, whoa, that's the power of God. But the Bible says God wasn't in the wind. And then an earthquake starts to shake things, and then there's a fire that sweeps through the whole valley. We're like, look at these awesome, powerful things that are happening. This must be God. But every one of them, it tells us God wasn't in that. But then Elijah hears a gentle whisper. And something in him said, this is the Lord. This is the Lord. And he goes out and he lays his complaints before the Lord, and God ministers to him in this moment. But here's the third thing that we observe in Elijah's life is that you will not find God in the hype. You know, when we're discouraged, we start to look for mountaintop experiences. I want to go to that conference, and at that conference, you know, big name speaker, they'll have big worship team people, all those people, it's going to be powerful. Or I want to go to that Christian concert. Man, I'm telling you, Elevation Worship is going to be there, or the upper room, or whoever you listen, they're going to be there. And if I could just get into that room, then I would experience the power and the presence of God. Oh, this speaker, if I could go listen to this preacher, or I got to do this. We're looking for the mountaintop experience. Maybe if you've been serving God a long time, you get to the place where you're like, I wish I could feel the goosebumps again. I used to feel like when the presence of God would be in the room, I could feel the goosebumps, and I would just feel it all over me. Or the first time I ever encountered God, it was so emotional, and I could feel it in every part of me, and it just overwhelmed me, and I just began to cry, or I could just really sense His presence. But I don't feel that anymore. And so what do? We start to try to, okay, well, wait a minute, what song was playing? Let me get that song, and where was I? Let me go there. And what was the message? And what did we try to recreate it, right? Let's put the mountain back together. Let's put the big moment back together. Let's build up the hype. Let's bring back the emotion. But Elijah would tell any of us, God's not in the hype. He's in the whisper. Now, I find that really interesting because here's the truth about the world that we live in. A whisper is pretty hard to hear. We're so overwhelmed and inundated with yelling voices. We don't even realize it anymore. You know, that's the scary part. We have literally become so desensitized to it, we don't even realize that everyone and everything around us is screaming, look here! My phone, Facebook, Instagram, look here. News networks, look here. YouTube, social media, this voice, this person, look here. And in the midst of all of that, we've got to find a way to literally say to every one of those voices, will you please be quiet so that I can just hear the whisper? I just want to hear the whisper again. I want to hear God again. It's a really hard thing to do. Maybe you've never experienced that before. And I'm sorry if you haven't, but it's a real thing. There are people in this room who could tell you countless stories of moments that they themselves have had with the Lord when, you know, sure, can God work through the concerts and the conferences? He can. I'm not saying that those things are worthless. But I am saying when we trade them for that moment where we lock ourselves away in a room and say, I just want to encounter God. Be away from everything and everyone, and even turn off our phone. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you turn off your phone, thou assuredly will not die. When King James there, just so that we all know, right? We need to find him again, church. If you're facing discouragement today, can I tell you the greatest medicine you will ever find is just to get into a place where you can hear the whisper. Where just something in you says, this is God. and it's ministering to every fiber of my being to be in his presence. We live with discouragement daily. We live with distractions daily. We live with loud voices daily. We live with a world that is completely out of our control daily. We live surrounded by stimuli daily. Where, when are we making time to just find the whisper and say, God, here I am. Here I am. We're going to go back into a moment of worship here. But I want to give you an opportunity to just seek God and say, Lord, I want to meet with you. Maybe you don't know what that looks like. I mean, it really can be as simple as just admitting to God, Lord, I am distracted and overwhelmed, and the world around me is demanding my attention nonstop, and just simply saying, in all of that, God, will you meet me in the whisper? Will you meet me in this moment? And it does take something. And I know, I get asked all the time, well, do I have to come to the front? Can't I just stay at my seat? Sure, you can do whatever you want, but haven't you tried staying at your seat? Why don't you try coming up here to find a spot and say, God, I want to meet with you. I want to pray and ask God to do something powerful, because I believe that as we make the decision to step into where God is calling us to and leave everything else behind, that there are ways in which God himself wants to minister to us individually and in community. Lord, I just pray right now that you would begin to minister to every single one of us in this place. And Father, it's not in the hype that we seek you. It's not in the emotion. It's in the whisper. And I pray, God, that you'll forgive us for the many ways in which we have forgotten about your voice, just because we're so inundated with so many other voices and so many other things and so many other distractions that we just completely lose sight of you. We choose this moment, God. And I pray that just as you promised in Psalm 91, that when we call on you, you'll answer. That you'll show up in this moment and that we will encounter you. Not through emotion, but through your presence. We love you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.